Hey, it's Clive from To Be A Bonsai. This channel's for beginners, for experienced enthusiasts. Let's kick things off. Awesome, so today we're going to be styling this Juniper Procumbens Nana. This plant is native to Japan, and it's a beautiful species to style, as the branches are very easy to manipulate. Cool, so what tools do we need? Right over here, I've got a pair of bonsai scissors. These are really nice and sharp to cut all the finer bits of foliage on the tree. Then over here, I've got a concave cutter. This will cut off all the big branches. It's quite an incredible tool because it's used to, when you cut the branch, you want to really go as close to the trunk or the cambium layer as possible, and the cut will cut into the cambium layer, so when it starts healing, it won't scar the tree as much. And then over here, we've just got some gin pliers. This will be to make some dead wood or any gins or sharis on the tree. Then over here, we've just got some good old wire cutters. You really don't need to spend too much money on wire cutters. All they're going to be doing is cutting your wire. And that's pretty much all we're going to be needing on the tool related part of the process. But the most important thing we're going to be needing for today is some bonsai wire. So I've got some 4mm gauge bonsai wire here. I've got some 2mm over here. And then I've got about some 1.5 and 1 millimeter bonsai wire. This is going to shape the tree in how we want the direction for the tree to grow. So this is my favorite part. We're going to go inside the tree. It's almost like unwrapping a Christmas present because we don't really know what's going to be inside this tree. So what I'm going to start doing is removing any branches that are growing right on the base of the trunk. And you see I've made quite a big cut over there. I'm just going to trim off all these branches right on the base. You can see all the dead foliage inside the tree. The reason this brown stuff didn't grow is because it didn't get enough sun into the canopy of the tree. So while we do this, we're also going to allow more sun to enter the tree. So you're probably wondering how much foliage you should be cutting off. So on junipers, they don't like to, you shouldn't remove all their foliage off the tree, but you can remove about 30% off the tree without affecting it. So we're going to be going quite close to the trunk or the branch of the tree. We want to cut the whole branch off so we can see what trunk the tree has to offer. So now, as you can see, while I'm trimming, we can notice that it's got a lovely trunk over there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start working on all the branches going forward. So what we want to do now is we're going to take each section of the tree. As you can see from the trunk, it grows into lovely little branches. So on each branch, we want to clean up right on the base of the branch. We're going to clean up about 2 to 3 centimeters on a small tree like this, give or take. And what we want is to leave the foliage right on the tip of the tree, like that. So we're going to go to each branch and we're going to trim off all of the foliage right on the base of the branch. So on this branch, what we're going to do is we're going to clean up anything growing right on the base of the trunk. So you can see there's a small little bud over there. There's nothing else growing. We're just going to work our way a bit further on. We're just going to trim all these small little juvenile pieces of foliage off. If you want the small pieces, you can also pluck off just like that. You don't need to use your scissors. But anything big, you want to use your scissors so it doesn't tear the branch. And if you can see here, now it's split into 2 branches. So what we want to do is we want to keep eliminating some of the foliage right on the base, and we're just going to leave a tip of foliage right here on the tip of the branch, just like that. We've unwrapped the Christmas present, and now we can see what's inside the tree and what it has to offer. So now we need to decide on which branches should we keep. So most of the time you want to try eliminate any branches that are growing downwards or going straight upwards, competing with the apex or the center line, or any branches that are crossing over each other or crossing over the center line. Those are generally good branches to remove. So what we want to start with is removing any branches that we can see that are out of place. So something I've noticed over here, so the reason I'm cutting off this branch is, as you can see, it's taking away from this beautiful curve the tree has. So we want to show off those lovely curves in the tree. So I'm going to go and cut it right off like this. Because it's a small branch, we don't need to worry about dieback on the tree. I'll explain that in another episode. So another branch we can cut off is anything that's growing parallel from each other. We never want 2 branches growing parallel because it causes swelling at this section where these 2 branches meet, and that's just going to look unattractive in the end on your bonsai. And also another reason is when we wire it, it will give it a lot more shape to the tree. So I'm going to start by trimming off these 2 parallel branches. So I'm going to decide to trim off the weaker, smaller looking one and keep the healthier, stronger looking one. So I'm going to trim this one off right over here. Boom. So now what we want to do is trim off these 2 parallel branches over here. So in this instance, I would like to rather trim off this one on this side, so we have 2 branches on either side of the branch, just like that. So now you can see it's very uneven if I leave this branch, because we want to start creating a bit of a pattern in the tree. So from 1 branch to 2 to 3, here's another parallel branch. I'm going to trim off over there, just like that. Cool, so now you can see that I have a very long juvenile branch over here. So because I want to start compacting the tree in, I don't need such a long branch for the style of the tree. So what I'm going to do is trim this right off, leaving a little bit of dieback over there, and this will be the new leader for the branch. I might end up trimming a little bit more off, but we'll see how we go throughout the video. So we want to try determine a leader for our apex of the tree. So a lot of people make the mistake by using the big thick part of the trunk, where eventually the tree doesn't look very natural. So if you can see here, this would be a very nice candidate as a leader over here. You can see it's still young and fairly thin, which have really nice taper in the long run. But the one thing is, next to it, there potentially could be other leaders. So these are going to start interfering with the main leader. So what I want to do is start trimming off these ones that are growing straight upwards, because I've decided that I want this to be the nice new leader. So anything growing completely upwards that wants to interfere with the leader, you're going to trim right off, just like that. Perfect. So now looking at this tree, you can see how thick and straight this branch is. Although we can put wire on and give it some movement, it's going to start competing with the lower dominant branch of the tree. So with bonsai, you always want your bottom branch to be the longest, and you always want it to be the thickest and most dominant. So as you can see, this is going to start interfering with that. So what I'm going to do is take my concave cutters so I can cut a slightly bigger cut to the tree. And because the branch is a lot bigger, you want to leave a little bit of dieback so that the branch doesn't die back to the leader and kill off this new bit of growth. So now let's move our focus on to this side of the tree. As you can see, there are a few more parallel branches on the tree. So I'm going to start removing these parallel branches. Just like that. Perfect. Now I think it's ready to start getting some wire on the tree. So why is wiring important? Wiring determines the shape of the tree. So it allows you to transform it in the way you want it to grow. So first we're going to start off by using our 4mm wire, and I want to start by wiring the trunk of the tree, which I will eventually then lead to the thickest part of the branch, which is going to be our bottom branch over here. So what I want to do is I'm going to cut how much wire I need for the tree. So I'm going to place it, and I'm literally going to just follow the angle of the branch, and I'm going to cut the wire over here. You can see I always cut a little bit extra just to be extra sure, and because we wrapping it around the branch, it's going to eventually use up the whole length of the wire. So first we want to place the wire into the soil. So I'm going to stick it into the soil about 2 to 3 centimeters deep, so it anchors into the soil, and then I'm going to start by wrapping the wire around the tree. It's very important to make the wire extremely tight to the trunk or the branch, especially when you're starting off. So as you can see, I'm wrapping it really tight around the branch. So you want to try keep the wire going at a 45-degree angle, and you want the gap between the wire to be as equal as possible. So I'm just going to keep going. As you can see, now I have to miss all these branches that are in the way. I'm going to go around them. And as you wire, it's very important to hold the main base of the tree, so we don't wrap it around and pull it out of the pot. We're going to just hold the base so we support it as we wire. And I'm going to go all the way up the thickest part of the tree. So what I'm doing now is what we call the one branch technique. So when there's just one branch available, you're going to just use one piece of wire. So you can see how I wrap it around the thickest part, which is the branch over here, and I'm going to go from under and over. And I'm going to do the same wiring as I did to the trunk. Try wire all the way to the tip. And if there's any wire left over, we're just going to trim it off to neaten it up. So you can see in the beginning I used the thicker piece of wire. Now I'm using thinner wire because you can tell by the size of the branch. You can see the branches are a lot thinner and more delicate. A good way of telling what size wire you should use is if you can push the branch down without the wire bending. That's generally a good indication. So now you can see there's two branches on either side of each other. They're not exactly parallel, but they're on either side. So what I'm going to do is use one piece of wire to wire both branches. This is called the two-branch technique. So I'm going to start by coming from under the branch and over. And now I'm going to take this piece of wire and wire the other branch over here. So many people overthink wiring and want it to be exceptionally neat. It's a very good practice to do, but sometimes we shouldn't overthink things and we should just try apply ourselves, and later on we'll get better and better. So now as I've wired, I can see that this piece over here is a very young juvenile piece of foliage. And again, like I said earlier, we want to compact the tree in. So what I'm going to do is trim off this branch over here, allowing these younger, more delicate branches to start growing out. So I've changed over to the really thin, small piece of wire, which is 1 millimeter. This is going to be used to wire these small, very delicate pieces of foliage. So with the younger branches like these, you're not going to wrap it too tightly. We want it to still breathe. So as long as your branch can move around, that's perfect. But with anything that is bigger than these, you want to wrap it quite tightly to the cambium layer. So if and when you start bending the branches, and if anything decides to crack, that wire should hold the cambium layer down. Awesome, so the wiring has been done. Now it's time to style the tree and move all the branches into the places we want them to go. So remember, you want a leader when you style your tree. So before we decided that this would be a nice leader over here, but there are many possibilities we could go. So if I move this out of the way, potentially we could have this as a leader over here, which I'm starting to be drawn to. Something like that, or we can stick with our original plan over here, like that. So, should we get stuck into it? A nice little trick you can also do is angle the tree to the side, and you can see how it changes the whole shape of the tree. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2 pebbles under here just to change the shape of the tree, because I like it swooping downwards just like that. And now, because it's swooping downwards, it almost feels like it could be a nice windswept tree. So for instance, if I now change this as my new leader, you can twist the branch around like that. And these are very, very nice to wire. They're very pliable. You can see over here, I've changed the whole design like that, as if something like an elephant or something grazed on the tree on this side and everything was pushing, or some wind was pushing all the foliage in that direction. So what we want to do is, when styling your tree, you want to generally start bringing the branches downwards. This starts symbolizing age in the tree. So over here, we could start bringing these branches downwards like this, but there still doesn't have too much character in the tree. What we want to start doing is putting nice movement and curves in the branches. So if you can see here, I'm moving the branch slightly and I'm creating a nice S shape in the branch, just like that, just so the tree looks a lot more natural. So the way I like to imagine it is, it's a bunch of stairs. So if you can see, here's one stair, and as you walk your way up the tree, there's all these little stairs going all the way up to the top of the tree. So another thing is to keep in mind is you want that conical triangle shape. So the leader, the top apex, will always be the tallest part of the tree, and as you work your way down, there should be a nice conical triangle shape to the tree. So you can see by this branch here is taking away that conical triangle shape. So what I want to do is start swooping this down. As I do it, I'm going to create some movement in the branch, and now this can be another stair over here in this negative space around here. Now you can see this branch over here is going to start competing with this main leader over here, which is not what we want. So anything growing directly upwards, if it's not the main leader, we generally want to remove. So I'm just going to trim that off now, and now you can start seeing that conical triangle shape. As this tree gets stronger, it's also going to start growing a lot more, and this is going to start filling out and start filling in these spaces over here. So now you can see a lot of the branches are in place. There's a few little tweakings that I still need to do, but it's got that nice conical triangle shape. My idea behind the tree was, if you swing it around here, you can see how it grows in one direction, as if it's a windswept style, or if the tree's been growing off a rock or off a mountain cliff over here. So now what we want to start doing is we want to remove anything growing downwards, because all of these little pieces of foliage are going to eventually get shaded off and they won't see the sun, so they're going to die off naturally. So we might as well remove them now. And this is the nice thing about bonsais. You also don't have to do this all in one day or rush it. You can do this over a few days. If you're looking for a new hobby other than watching TV, this is a great way. While your wife or your husband is watching TV, you can be trimming bonsais. Here's a nice example. One piece of foliage over there growing directly downwards. You just want to trim that away. And as the tree grows, these pieces of foliage are going to probably come back, but we just want to keep removing them and rather direct the energy to where we want the energy to be. It's been so nice spending time with you guys, teaching you how to style a Juniper Procumbens Nana from the beginning. And as you can see, it's not so daunting. All you need is a juniper, you need some wire, you need some wire cutters, and pretty much bonsai scissors and potentially a concave cutter. And that is all we really needed for today. And just something to remember, be patient and don't be so hard on yourself. Bonsai is a beautiful, beautiful thing, and it can teach you many lessons. Please remember to like, subscribe, and if you want to get in touch with me, give me a follow on Instagram. My handle is @To Be A Bonsai. Thank you so much.